Since teams have arrived in the bubble, many players have been injured, and this really hurts a team's chances to make the playoffs or a deep run in the playoffs. Rajon Rondo, Justice Winslow, Domantas Sabonis, and Marvin Bagley III are the top players injured. So with these players injured, how do these injuries affect these teams' chances?
Well, I think for the Kings and Grizzlies, I don't think it makes too much of an impact on how they're going to do because I don't feel like they were going to either have a chance of making the playoffs or really have a good chance of making the playoffs. But for the Pacers, I think this really hurts them. But I think it really depends on how serious the injury is. If if it's like a 1 to 2 week injury, I think they might be able to handle it. If it's like a couple, not a week, but like a couple days injury, I think they might be able to handle it. But more than like 2 weeks, it's going to be costly for them because uh, the 8 seeding games are only spanning for about 2 weeks, and once they get into playoffs, they're really going to need him because he was such a big part of their team. Because he averaged 18 and a half points per game, 12 and a half rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game on the season. And if he is lost for the season or more than the majority of the season, I think the Pacers go from dark horse title contenders to like a good playoff team who should make it to the second round and not much further. It's kind of like the Jazz situation. I compared the Pacers and the Jazz. I think they're very similar in their respective conferences, but just like the Jazz, with such a huge player on their team going down, for the Jazz it's Bogdan Bogdanovic, and for the Pacers it's Domantas Sabonis. With Domantas Sabonis going down, I think it's a huge loss for them, especially if it's a serious injury, because they've already lost Jeremy Lamb and Victor Oladipo, and Victor Oladipo has yet to show his old self, like his most improved player level self. And like I said, it really depends on the seriousness of the injury, and I think that really could make or break this team's success in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you there. For the Sacramento Kings and the Memphis Grizzlies, it doesn't really affect them too much because they haven't played many games, and with Justice Winslow, he hasn't played any games with the Grizzlies, so they don't have to really change anything at all. And for the Kings, Rashawn Holmes has stepped up in Marvin Bagley's absence, so for the Kings, they didn't have a real chance in the playoffs anyways, so it doesn't really affect them too much. And before the Pacers and the Lakers, it really hurts them because, like you mentioned, with the Pacers, if Domantas Sabonis is out for 1 to 2 weeks, which is basically the seeding games, they could drop all the way to possibly the 6th or 7th seed, and that means they will have to face either the Toronto Raptors, Boston Celtics, or Miami Heat, and they could easily get beat in that first round. And I don't think that's good for the Indiana Pacers because they were swept last year against Boston. So this, if Domantas Sabonis is healthy within the next week, for a week or less than a week, I think it will really help him. But I don't see that happening with him, and I think the Pacers will probably get beat in the first round. But for the Lakers, this really hurts them because first they lost Avery Bradley and then they lost Rajon Rondo for 6 to 8 weeks. So this means some playoff time as well, and this really hurts them because they didn't really get a second playmaker behind LeBron James, and that was their one weakness as a team because many experts have said that they needed a second playmaker, and when Avery Bradley went down, J.R. Smith was a good option, probably the best option, but if they could have signed a backup playmaker, it would have been really it would have been help. It would have helped them a lot. Quinn Cook is a good playmaker. He isn't a great playmaker, but he's average at that role, and I think he can play that well. But when LeBron sits on the bench, this team will really suffer without a good playmaker.
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. I think the Lakers. I don't think they're in too bad of a position. I don't think Rondo, like as he was currently playing, we know playoff Rondo is a different monster, but as he was currently playing, I don't think he was doing too good to help this Lakers team. Like, a lot of people were kind of mad that he was still on the team after the trade deadline. But I think his experience is going to be something they need. And I think they can make it deeper into the playoffs to the point where he will be able to return while they're still in the playoffs. So I don't think it will be too much of a problem for them. J.R. Smith and Dion Waiters are both really good additions for them. And Quinn Cook is also pretty good at his role as a facilitator and scorer. So I don't think they're going to suffer too much from Rajon Rondo's injury. I think he'll definitely be helpful, and he's very good in the playoffs when it comes to dissecting the other team's strategies. But other than that, I feel like it won't play a huge role if they do lose it, like anywhere in the playoffs. I don't think the Rajon Rondo injury will play a huge role, but I don't think they're going to miss him too much either.
I think it will kind of hurt them because when LeBron's on the bench, they don't have a playmaker. They had Avery Bradley, but he opted out, and now Rajon Rondo is injured. So it will really be tough for the Lakers, and they'll for sure make it to the playoffs and pass the first round, even without those two players. But it will hurt them when in situations like in the clutch when Avery Bradley was supposed to be in that like last 5 minutes of the game in the clutch situation, and they don't have that anymore, and so it will hurt a lot. But hopefully these players will come. Rajon Rondo will come back to help the Lakers possibly win a championship this year. So for these teams that lost a player, they that those minutes are gone from for the team. They have to replace them. So this means they'll get more players will get more time on the court to fill for these players' absences. So how can these players' respective teams replace their minutes?
Well, let's go ahead and start with the Pacers. I think it's obvious that Miles Turner is going to get a lot more minutes to showcase what he really can do. And Nate McMillan, their head coach, I think he's famous for his postseason adjustments and how he tries new things out in the postseason, while other coaches really are hesitant to do that. And I think you can expect TJ Warren to get more minutes at the power forward position. And I think you could see Doug McDermott possibly being the starting small forward for these Pacers. I think he'll be able to show what he can do as a laser three-point shooter. TJ Warren is a certified scorer. He can score from anywhere, and he can play good defense as a power forward down low in the post. And Miles Turner will continue to anchor their defense and help out greatly on the offensive side of the ball. So even though Domantas Sabonis is a huge loss for the Pacers talent-wise and rotational-wise, I think they do have the players who could step up in his absence. But for the Kings, I could see Harry Giles III and Jabari Parker each seeing like 12 more minutes of playing time. And that'll really give them more of an opportunity to show how good they can really be. I think Richaun Holmes may eat some of those extra minutes for those two, but otherwise than that, I think you could see Harry Giles and Jabari Parker taking like a quarter longer in the game. But if they don't perform well, I think both of these two, they could show they have potential, or they could show that they're wasting that potential. And if they don't perform well, I think this could be close to both of their final chances in the NBA. And for the Grizzlies, I don't think it doesn't affect them because Justice Winslow never played a game for them. But yeah.
Yeah, some of your points I agree, and some of them I disagree. For the Pacers, I agree with you, and I think Miles Turner will get more minutes. And I think you could see Jakar Sampson on the Indiana Pacers get those minutes. He's really played well in the scrimmage games, and he's hitting his shots and he's playing good defense. So he might get more minutes. You also have to realize that TJ Leaf is also their backup, so he can slide into that starting role if they need him to. and he can.
Yeah, but he's like their third string center. He's like their third string big.
Yeah. I'm
So
just saying. I'm not saying like that.
yeah,
He will be. I'm just saying he might.
but he'll get more minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, for the Lakers, it will be kind of tough because they have J.R. Smith and Dion Waiters, and they're not really known as ball handlers and facilitators.
I think they'll just give each of those two a couple more minutes to see what they can do to lead the maybe second unit possibly.
Yeah, it will be tough, but because they'll have to get kind of used to it, and I think they've been okay at that during these scrimmage games. I think um the chemistry will bond together more, and they'll Frank Vogel, the coach, will find um, a backup facilitator for LeBron James. And before the Sacramento Kings and the Memphis Grizzlies, they don't really have to do much. And this is where I kind of disagree with you on Rashawn Holmes and Marvin Bagley. I think Rashawn Holmes had the starting role, and I think Marvin Bagley only played 13 games this season. So they didn't have to. They've been rolling with the same rotation this entire year almost. And Harry Giles has been the backup to Rashawn Holmes. So I don't think it will really affect them too much because I think they'll all get the same minutes. You could possibly see
I mean,
Jabari
to me
Parker.
personally, I understand that he only played 13 games, but I think you could see a little uptick in the minutes for Harry Giles III and Jabari Parker. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not going to impact their decisions too much.
Yeah, I think that they're going not they don't have to make that many changes since they're not contending really for that playoff spot, and they have a very young team who's lost one of their top two players in Marvin Bagley, top three.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So we see the Kings and the Spurs. These both have young cores that lost some of their best players. What do you think is more important for them? Looking to develop and give experience for their young core, or actually trying to make the playoffs during this Orlando bubble experience?
I think for both teams, they need to play their young players. For the Spurs, they have DeJounte Murray, Derek White, Keldon Johnson, the rookie, and I think those players they need to develop during these 8 games. And I don't think Coach Greg Popovich really expects them to make the playoffs. I mean, you never know what's in Greg Popovich's mind. You know, he might help this team make the playoffs, but I don't see that really happening. I think he's just going to play their young players and just get their chemistry going for this young group of guys. And for the Kings, are the same thing. You'll see a lot of players like Kyle Guy might get some minutes during these games, and Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox, they'll get a lot more minutes bonding together. And so I don't really see these teams as playoff teams, and I don't think the Kings and the Spurs will see themselves as a playoff team. So I think they'll just play out their young players and play their young players.
Yeah, one last question before we go into the next topic. You just talked about Buddy Hield getting more minutes. Who do you think deserves that starting shooting guard position more, Bojan Bogdanovic or Buddy Hield?
It has to be Buddy Hield. I mean, I don't like last season. You looked at them and they were, I think about two or three games away from that 8th seed. And so I think Luke Walton hasn't done an amazing job coaching this team, and I think Bogdan Bogdanovic is a great sixth man for the Kings, and that really hurt Buddy Hield's and Luke Walton's relationship, as they weren't really happy. Buddy Hield wasn't really happy with Luke Walton putting him on the bench, but I kind of understand because he wasn't doing that well. But you also got to realize that all players go through slumps where they're not that great, and you have to just let them play it through, and you can't just sit a player during that. And I think that Buddy Hield really deserves that starting spot, and he always has.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't know why they fired Dave Gorger Georgia last year, but I think it was a mistake, and I think that Luke Walton's rotation can definitely be improved if they had wanted to have a chance of making the playoffs.